It's like me, like I put on 60, 70 pounds over a 10-year period of time. That's 6 pounds a year, man. It's a half a pound a month. You don't notice a half a pound a month, but it accumulates over a period of time, and then next thing you know, you're fat and getting divorced.
Hey everybody, thanks. I'm with Big Paul Barnett. Paul is an IFBB Pro coach, an online content creator, a serial entrepreneur, and just a super successful dude. So thanks a lot for being with me here today.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Thank you for having me on. We were talking about beforehand. I do a lot of these, and I enjoy talking to people and helping people. And bodybuilding is my hobby and my passion. Biohacking, I guess nutrition. Nutrition, honestly, is probably my favorite part of all this stuff.
Yeah, man. No, I'm excited to talk to you. And actually, I think that's a good starting point. I know you're a humble guy, so I don't want to I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but I think from the outside, you're a pretty remarkable success story. I think the thing that really sticks out to me is that you kind of changed your life and turned your life around later in life, right? You reached middle age, and I think a lot of people in middle age tend to be complacent, right? Maybe they give up on the things that they wanted when they were a kid, and you did the exact opposite, right? Like you totally transformed your physique, transformed your life. And I'm just kind of curious, how did that start? How did your love of bodybuilding start? What was your first initial entry point?
When I was a teenager, I've always been driven. I kind of have ADHD when it comes to things. I'm like all in or all out when it comes to stuff. I get hyper focused on one thing and then I kind of lose interest in other things. But when I was a teenager, I really got into bodybuilding and I was pretty serious about it, semi serious about it in my early 20s, up until about 30 years old. And then I had kids, got married, ran some businesses, and it just kind of took a back seat. I just lost interest in it. I focused my, it's not like I was sitting idle and doing nothing. I focused my energy elsewhere, which was business building and things like that. That's kind of where my passion was. And, married life, having young kids, it's not like I just woke up one day and said I wasn't going to work out anymore. It just, it just kind of happened. I had an injury, pretty bad injury. I tore my ACL, ruptured it completely, ripped it off the bone, ripped my MCL off the bone. And I took some time off from the gym, and then that time turned into a decade. I
Yeah.
just never went back. And, kids, life, and sort of the catalyst for me to get back into the gym, and this is kind of hilarious and a little selfish, but I went through a divorce and I was not in very good shape. And I'm like, man, I'm going to be back on the market now.
Mhm. Yeah.
I gotta get in shape. So I started working out again, and I caught the bug again of bodybuilding. I'm like, all right, I think I just want to do one show. One of the things that I've found is if you have, like, people talk about having goals and doing specific things. A lot of times if you have a deadline in front of you, if you say, well, I've got to have, I'm going to have a competition at this date, you tend to be a bit more diligent and, um, focused on your work when you know that you have that due date in front of you. So that's what I always like, having a specific goal and a specific hard target that I'm working towards. It's just how I'm wired. I've been like that since I was young. And that was sort of the goal I set. COVID happened and interrupted my first contest prep. And then, I got back on stage and started competing and just got bit by the bug again. Now, I've never stopped training people. I've always been training people here and there. I worked as a personal trainer all through college and a nutritionalist. I did that for about 5 years. I did some training and wrote diets, mostly diets for people. I've helped people in some contest prep over the years, and honestly, the YouTube channel, all of that sort of came about. My training partner got tired of people asking me questions at the gym, and he's like, just put some videos up and answer the questions. And so I made a bunch of videos. I made some videos about PEDs, like just some PED profiles. I made some videos about nutrition and things that I just pointed people to. If they ask me questions, I'm like, go watch the videos. And then I kind of noticed, I'm like, wow, a lot of people were watching these videos, and it just sort of took off from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing. I think your point just about having a deadline, right? Like it's hard to infinitely expend effort just for the sake of effort. You've got to have some kind of vision or goal in mind. Otherwise, you're just sort of like pushing that rock up the hill for forever. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, and I'll tell a lot of guys that come to me. You know, everybody has different goals and things that come to me, but I like guys. One of the goals that I'll get guys that come to me for coaching is like, I want to get in the best shape of my life. And I'm like, if you're truly committed to that, if you really want to get in the best shape of your life, do a bodybuilding show. You don't have to be like, like trying to get your pro card or be a super competitive guy, but have that due date in front of you. If you know that you got to get on stage in your underwear on August 9th, you're going to get in shape.
Right. Yeah, I mean that it has built-in accountability, right? You don't want to feel like a fool. I mean you're already kind of going to feel like a fool. You're oiled up in an underwear on stage, but like there's levels to it for sure.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I work just with bodybuilders. I have tons of people that I work with professional athletes. I have guys that are just people that are obese and want to lose weight. Uh, it runs the whole gamut of people. But for you get a lot of guys that hit 40, get in their 40s, and they call midlife crisis, whatever you want. Some guys want to buy a Corvette. Other guys want to get in the best shape of their life.
Hmm. Do you remember, so like when you were in that period when you were really working out, how did you like, I don't know, how did you feel about your body? How did you feel about your self-image?
I was pretty embarrassed at where I was because I had been a bodybuilder in my 20s. I remember going back, I think it was my 25th. Yeah, it was my 25th high school class reunion. And I ran into a girl I knew in high school, and she said to me, "Didn't you used to be a bodybuilder?" And I'm just like, "Oh my fucking god!" That stabbed me right in the heart.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I used to be a bodybuilder," and that I remember that one stuck with me. That one stuck with me, and I was just embarrassed that I let myself get in such a sad state. Even if I just worked out a few days a week, lifted weights, and been a little more diligent with my diet. Now, I wasn't completely sedentary. I was doing jujitsu and playing pickup basketball here and there and doing some stuff, but my diet was terrible. When you're working 10, 12 hours a day as an executive in a company, I mean, it's just order and carry out and, sitting at your desk all day drinking lattes, right? It's not exactly the best lifestyle for being healthy.
Yeah, do you work with people now who are like, working 70 out 80-hour weeks?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
yeah. And what's
Yeah.
your strategy for helping people balance that kind of thing?
You have to make time for the gym. I know a lot of people really it doesn't take that much. An hour a day you got to carve out. And I really for not even 7 days a week. If you can just do it, commit to an hour a day, 5 days a week, that's probably enough to be healthier than 95% of the American population, to be honest with you. And if you keep your diet semi clean, and now it's so easy with diet too. Like you don't even need to cook your food yourself. If you're an executive, you can just order meal prep. They'll even make it to the macros you want. So there's really not a lot of excuses. It's just getting into the discipline and structure of doing so. And then plus for somebody who is an entrepreneur or an executive, you're going to perform better if you're physically healthier and at your job. I remember, I don't know, I got up as high as 300 pounds, I think. I was pretty fat there for a while. And I'd never been fat really. I had a little chubby phase when I was middle school, but like I'd never really been like fat before. And I remember just sitting at my desk and like halfway falling asleep at my desk and just not being able to perform optimally. Like I look back on it now, it was terrible for my performance for the job.
Oh yeah, I mean you were dragging around all that extra weight. You probably had sleep apnea,
Sleep
right? Like you just
apnea, glucose levels are running high. I mean, when you're inflammation, all these other things that affect performance, and you need to be mentally sharp when you're running a company.
hmm Yeah. And I also think that, I mean, being in shape helps too, but I also think that expending effort in the gym and doing something voluntarily choosing something that's deliberately hard makes the rest of your life a lot easier. Like a
Yeah.
boardroom meeting is not intimidating if you did squats the day before.
Yeah, I mean, or the same thing like jujitsu,
Yeah.
getting choked out by having
Yeah.
somebody, literally in a simulated life or death situation where you could get choked out or arm broken or something like that. Yeah, and I think that's something that's missing in a lot of people's lives now. They don't have that physical outlet. Like our bodies are made to move. They're meant to be used, and mentally, I think physically and mentally, I think it affects you in a certain way after a while. You just don't realize that it's happening, but you have this decline that happens when you don't use your body and you don't have these physical outlets. Even if it's just going out and playing golf or something. I mean, any or tennis or whatever. Have something.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I don't want to get all metaphysical, but I think that there really isn't a separation between the mind and the body.
No,
That's something
it's
we just,
interconnected.
yeah. I mean, so if you're neglecting your body, you're neglecting your mind. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's. I mean, your mind is an organ, right? I mean, it depends on the rest of the body for it to function properly.
Yeah. So what was it like? So when you sort of, right, you mentioned divorce happened. What was it like to get back into the gym? Was it exciting? Did it feel intimidating? Did it feel like coming home?
Um, it was a little embarrassing going back in. I was wearing sweatshirts and hiding a bit over in the corner, and it was kind of seeing these other guys that were doing stuff that I used to be able to do. It's like shit. Wasn't I wasn't I wouldn't say like it was intimidating because I've been an athlete my entire life and I've done athletic things, so I'm used to being in there. It was more like being sort of ashamed that I let myself go that far. And it is a little, and I can understand where somebody's really out of shape. Getting back in shape is overwhelming. It's an overwhelming feeling. Like it took me a solid 2 years to get all the fat off. Really, I mean, it's you don't put it on quickly, but I mean, it's a math game, really. At the end of the day, I mean, if you have to lose, I think I lost close to like 70, 80 pounds. I mean, you do the math on it. I mean, that's close to like 300,000 calories, right? That you have to burn off. I mean, that is an incredible amount of fat loss that you have to do, and it takes time. You're not going to do that in 16 weeks. You have to it's going to take a couple of years. And usually when I have somebody like that that's in that situation, we try to get small wins. We set small goals. Let's lose 2 pounds this week. That's sort of always been my approach to tackling big goals. I forget who said it, but there was a line. The way you climb Mount Everest is putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah, if you look up at the peak, that peak seems impossible and too far away. You're not going to accomplish that goal. You just have to keep putting that one foot in front of the. You need to be marching in the right direction. You need to have a plan to get up there. But it really just starts with just that simple approach. Just take one step at a time. I'll grind away at a goal. I think if I had one superpower, I would say that that's what it is that I'm willing to just grind away at the boring stuff. I think a lot of people lack that ability. That's something that I think is a superpower if you can learn how to do it. But that really is what it was. It was just tackling that one step at a time and just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a bodybuilder and you look at the average middle-aged man, they're essentially two different species, right? Like, I mean, they're and to think that you have to go from being one to the other does seem like an impossible task. So you have to tackle it step by step. You can't learn all the things. You can't. It took you probably 15 years to get 300 pounds of fat. You're not going to undo that in a 16-week diet. It's impossible.
No, no, you're not. No, you're not. But it can be done. It's a goal. That can be broken down into steps, and you can tackle it. And if you're intelligent about it, I think a lot of times we live in a world where there's so much immediacy. with technology, with everything that we do now. I think a lot of people are preconditioned to not have patience and persistence with things. And really, it doesn't matter whether it's bodybuilding or business or learning how to play golf or whatever your craft is. It takes time. I studied music in college, and there's I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that said this, but there and it really applies to music, but it's the 10,000 hours to perfection rule. I'm sure you've heard of it before, but it really just is just a metaphor for how long it takes to perfect and become excellent at something. And most people, I think, lack the patience and the persistence that it takes to do that. Now, that is a skill that you can practice and learn, I think. I would say that music probably is where I first learned it. I started music when I was, I don't know, 10 years old. I was terrible at it. And it's just one of those things you just practice. The more you practice, the better you get. And I remember having a point in my head where that clicked with me, that I noticed that the more, it was really the first time in my life I realized, I think it was in high school, that the amount of effort that I put in something had a corresponding relationship to the results on the other end. I always just sort of assumed that my life was up to fate, and I think a lot of people just wander aimlessly about things. But if you're willing to just keep chipping away at something, you will progressively get better at it.
Well, what was your primary instrument?
I played a couple. I actually went to college. This is hilarious. I played the tuba, but I was a classically trained musician. I went to college on a tuba scholarship. But I also played the saxophone, the piano, and the guitar. But the tuba was my main instrument.
No, that's it. I would actually say my story is very similar to yours. I went to performing arts high school for guitar, and I studied jazz guitar in college. And I felt the same thing that you said when I discovered guitar. It was the first thing I ever felt like I could get good at. It was the
Yeah,
first thing that I understood. It was like it didn't happen immediately. It took a long time, but it was the first thing I was like, oh, if I actually just do this every day for hours and hours and hours, I'll get better.
yeah.
And
So
that changed everything for me.
you understand the process then. I think it's, as a musician, you become intimately familiar with that process of just chipping away at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
that that's
guitar,
that's the phrase, right? It's the woodshed. That's where
yeah,
you are.
it
Yeah.
is the woodshed. Yeah, and I've always heard, you're a music guy, but they say guitar is the easiest instrument to learn, the hardest to master.
Maybe. I mean, I will say a lot of the woodwind, like saxophone is hard. French horn is like insane, right? I think
Yeah,
there's all intricacies to everything, but I think one of the things about guitar is that because it's so accessible and popular, there are really fucking good guitar players, right?
yeah.
So the difference between the floor and the ceiling is very high.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anybody can pick up a guitar and play a Beatles tune,
Yeah.
right? Within a couple, a week or two. But, to truly master it, to understand the fretboard and scales and arpeggios and,
Yeah,
to,
you'll never learn everything.
yeah, I mean, that there are very few people that ever reach that level of mastery of the instrument. And, it's true with all things in life. To me, it's just a metaphor for life. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. It's really, to me, it's not so much the bodybuilding; it's the metaphor for everything else that you do. It's how you can translate those skills, the ability to chip away at something, to be disciplined, to have a plan that works, and apply that to everything else that you do in your life. I think that's really sort of the value of it for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's the coolest part about it, right? Like it teaches you process. It teaches you iterative thinking and how to have a goal and work towards it. And I think you've talked about this before. I find that a lot of the guys I work with are often people who are in some kind of recovery. Maybe not active recovery,
Yeah, a
right?
ton. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I find it can be a really strong tool for people to help them rebuild their lives and like reimagine themselves as efficacious people.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think the discipline, the structure of it, the little wins, the success. I think that tends to help. Bodybuilders tend to be compulsive people too, so
Yeah,
there's a little bit
yeah.
of that. It maybe tickles a little bit of that dopamine um, itch that that's the people that tend to be addicts have. In a productive way, right? So. Um, you know, pushing up a weight or achieving a physique goal has a dopamine response. I mean, playing
Hmm.
in front of an audience and with
Yeah, totally.
in music too is the same way, right? It's performing is sort of the reward of all the practice that you do in music. At least that's the way I always kind of looked at it.
Yeah, but it's funny though. I hadn't actually thought about this, but as a musician, I still always liked practicing more than performing, just as I like lifting weights more than the performative
Yeah,
aspects of bodybuilding. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
do.
I do too. I'd say I enjoy the process, the grind. That's the part that I enjoy in the incremental growth that you get. I like really like to be honest with you, a bodybuilding show is sort of anticlimactic. You're on stage for 90 seconds, maybe
Yeah, right.
2 minutes, 3 minutes tops. You're in. It's all years of work to go out there and get spun in a circle and put in an order of placing. That's really that's really
Yeah.
it. The actual show itself is pretty anticlimactic.
No, for sure.
And honestly, with performing, like you know this, man. Once you have done it and rehearsed it so much, really, it's just autopilot when you get up there. It just happens. It's
And I
muscle
and I will
memory.
say that is a cool moment, right? Like
Yeah,
once you're 45 minutes into a set and you like haven't thought for the past six songs, that I will say that is a very cool moment. I
I
miss
think
that.
it's one of the things I've always enjoyed about music is I have a chaotic brain. My brain is just active. I was talking with my wife about this, but my brain is just always churning. And there's only really two things that turn my mind off. It's lifting weights and playing music. When I'm playing music, my brain. I mean, you have to be focused on that task. You can't think about what's for dinner or what are you doing tomorrow or what so and so is thinking about you. It by default quiets your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not present, you're not going to be able to play. It's just
Correct.
not possible.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Do you still play guitar or other things?
I bang around on the guitar and the piano once in a while. I don't play the tuba at all anymore. I haven't touched it. My son plays the tuba, although he's going to switch to guitar next year. He's going to in high school. He will be a freshman in high school next year, so he's going to make the switch to guitar. But I'm a very mediocre guitar player. I'll establish that. I just enjoy it. I didn't pick it up until college. When you I was a double major. I was a performance and education major. So education,
Hmm.
you have to take a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of fell in love with guitar when I took guitar pedagogy in college and started playing the guitar. And I wish I'd started earlier.
Yeah, a lot of people do the music education path, right? If you're trying to be a musician but you want
Yeah,
to be a little more practical minded, you end up doing something like that.
yeah. And
How
I
did you
ended.
drift? Because you're mostly worked in IT, right? That was the professional work you
Well,
were doing.
I know this may come as a shock, but there aren't help wanted ads in the Washington Post for tuba
For tuba
players. So
players. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did do some performing. I did some arranging and stuff, but just there's really just wasn't a lot of money in it. I kind of lost. I don't know. When I was at conservatory, it kind of drained the enjoyment out of music for me. I just got to a point where I was just like, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that yeah, I mean there's something about there's the competitive out environment which can be good or bad, but
Yeah.
it's also just all consuming.
Yeah, I just thought about it and then like I kind of got focused on business and making money. For better or for worse, I actually started my first business when I was in college. As a long story short, I dropped out my senior year and went back and finished up later. But I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got all consumed with starting this business I got into, and then I went back and got a second degree in computer science because I've always loved technology. Technology is kind of another passion of mine, and then I've done that for the last 20 or so years, and then I retired last year.
Yeah, what was it? I don't know. How does it feel now to have sort of moved on from that career? Because obviously, I mean, you're still busy. You're probably, I don't know, are you busier now with your
Yeah, I
other
mean,
things?
I coach a lot of people, probably too many people. Probably should cut back on it and make the social media content. It is well, the one thing that is weird. My day is not structured anymore. When I was, running a company, I mean, it was just meetings and calls back to back, every day. My day, like from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m., I knew what my day was every fucking day. And like now it's kind of just wake up and do whatever way the wind is blowing. That's been a little bit weird. I probably will get a little more focused and structured with my stuff. I wanted to take the challenge of trying to make a little more social media content this year and focus on that. And it's just a stupid little goal, another goal to have. I have been learning about what works on social media and what doesn't, and grow my social media presence this year. Although that's a double-edged sword, I can tell you that the social media thing is a mixed bag.
Right, I mean, it's a great way to reach people, but
It
it also means that you're reaching people, and people are terrible, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You reach, and I have to remind myself of this. I had to take a break from it here recently. I just wasn't doing stuff for like a month or so, because there are some very noisy, very awful people on social media. But I have to remind myself. One of my friends, social media consultant I work with, he's like, look, he's like, 2% of people on social media are assholes. They're just really loud assholes. And when you have 50,000 people following you, that's 1,000 assholes that are commenting on your stuff. Whereas if you have 500, it's one person,
yeah.
right? And you can block that one person, but it just gets really noisy as you get bigger. And I've talked to some people, a couple of my friends that have huge followings. Like I was talking to a guy this week. I don't want to name names, but one of my friends who has a massive following on social media, and he's like, you just can't even look at the comments anymore. It's like I can't look at DMs. I can't. I get so many DMs now. It's insane. I probably get 50 to 100 direct messages on Instagram a day. I can't even look at them.
Yeah, yeah, it's too much, for
And
sure.
I would say overwhelmingly, like really, like, and this is the psychology of social media. And it's you get 1,000 or you get 200 comments and four of them are negative. You don't look at the 196 positive ones. You just gravitate. So it's one of those things like where you have to be really careful with your mental health with social media and not get caught up in the negative stuff and not let it affect you emotionally. So that is something that I definitely have learned in working with it. Social media is an interesting thing. It is a powerful tool if used properly, but it's very it can be very negative if you're not careful with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're still a person, right? I think that people forget that social media personalities are still fundamentally people. Just because you know things about them, right? You have this weird, potentially parasocial relationship with them, doesn't mean they don't have feelings and thoughts, and that they don't actually react to the things you say to them.
Yeah, it's a guy that I know that has a pretty big following. He got attacked last year, and it was just over something stupid, and it was just I think it really affected him emotionally. It was just it was he didn't do anything wrong. It was just people went after him for something, right? Something silly, really, and it's just yeah, and you forget that there is a person on the other end of that.
Well, and you had mentioned when we were chatting before, you've actually had some threats too. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I've had people threaten to kill me.
And what is that? Because you criticize the carnivore diet?
They
Like, what's
criticize the
their
carnivore diet or
system?
vegan diet
Yeah.
or whatever. And look, some of it is like you poke a little bit and stir a little controversy to get more followers and engagement. There's always that fine line that you walk with social media where um, you want to encourage engagement a little bit, and some of it takes. I don't do anything what I would consider highly controversial. I'm not like one of these muckraker guys, but like maybe if I say something critical about a certain way of dieting or a certain way of training, it's people get very emotionally invested in, I guess I would say, diet, uh, training, and ideologies. They almost treat it like dogma, like it's a religion, and I think people have this need to be a part of something. And if you say that that's something that they're a part of is probably not the smartest, or there might be some chinks in that armor, they get very upset when you challenge something that they've emotionally invested themselves into.
Yeah, I think diet. I mean, food is really important to people, right? You have a deep emotional connection to it. We survive because of food, and if you make conscious dietary choices, some people turn that into their whole personality, their ideology. And if you question that, even though you're not attacking them, but it kind of undermines their sense of self.
Oh yeah, it certainly does, and it's kind of weird to me because I've always just sort of looked at diet as matter of fact, like there's tools in the toolbox, and you use certain tools to get the job done. Like I'm not against, say, like eating a carnivore diet. I mean, there are definitely some things there that I would consider to be suboptimal. But look, if you're obese, you're eating the typical crap American diet. When you throw out, you say you're just going to eat whole meat products. You're throwing out all of the trash food. That it's not that there's something magic about eating meat. It's that you've stopped eating all the other junk, right? You've stopped eating donuts, you've stopped eating pizza, you've stopped drinking beer, you've all the it's not that there's something inherently magical about it. But people really put their whole identity into it. And I kind of blame, and this is something that is upsetting to me. The diet charlatans that are selling stuff. They deliberately sort of turn this stuff cultish to sell, right? If who is a better client than somebody who's completely invested themselves emotionally into a basically turned it into a religion.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think that the behavior of the snake oil salesman is basically the same as that of the preacher who's deceiving people too, right?
Correct,
It's
100%.
you're taking advantage of people who want to believe something.
Yes.
Their life is hard. They've got this problem. You've got a shiny solution, and so it is. Like I do think people have there's personal responsibility there too, right? You shouldn't just listen to every message that appeals to your heart. But I do think that the charlatans are really, particularly in this age where their voice can be amplified like this, it's a really dangerous thing.
Yeah, and it really bothers me. I find it morally reprehensible, to be honest with you. And I will sometimes say some critical stuff about it, but I also got to remember that people's feelings get hurt when you when you say this stuff. But it's just wild to me. Like there are many different diet cults that exist, and I simply, my point is just eat real food, and you're probably going to be healthier at the end of the day. Now, I do think there are certain ways you can eat that you're going to be more optimal for sports. That there's certainly things you can do to optimize for bodybuilding that may not necessarily be the best for just the average person trying to get in shape. But once again, like that's why I say you need to be a little bit pliable in your approach and how you look at diet. But it's crazy that people would get so emotionally invested in a diet that they would write a manifesto and tell me how they're going to come murder me because I criticize their cult diet.
Well, yeah, I think one of the hallmarks I see of successful people is that they tend to not be attached to one specific method. Like you're more interested in results. Whatever works, works. You don't necessarily care how you get there. And I do think that I don't want to say all non-successful people do the opposite, but I think that having that kind of emotional attachment really can blind you to success because you're more interested in the choice you've making or the path you're taking rather than actually getting real results.
Well, being objective, being educated about something takes work. Being right, I mean it's hard work. I mean you have to actually spend some time reading. You have to spend some time being introspective. You have to spend some time thinking about things. Whereas just being emotional about something, I have a feeling, is easier. It really takes work to be to achieve that level of thinking, and we're inherently emotional beings. I mean, that's just how we're at the end of the day, we're still monkeys that were living in a cave not that long ago, beating each other over the head with clubs, being scared of the tribe that lived over the hill from us that was a little bit different. And anything that posed a threat to that, we just emotionally, I probably from some sort of survival mechanism, anything that's different, we just automatically assume is dangerous. But you have to work to overcome that monkey mind. Really, I mean, it takes work, and I think that's just a lot of people never really achieve that level of introspection. Is hard. Being objective is hard. It's really hard, and allowing yourself, even when you don't like it, to consider other ideas is really difficult.
Yeah, and I think on that topic of learning, one of the things I've observed about you from afar is you seem to be really good at finding credible sources of information and connecting with people who can help you with your problems. I think I remember hearing, right, you started working with Dr. Todd Lee when you were sort of coming back to bodybuilding. You also worked with Dante Trudel, right, like years ago, like that, which is kind of amazing in and of itself because that's not a thing he typically do. So you seem to have a talent for recognizing good sources of information and then sort of working with those people. Is that something you think about consciously?
Yeah, I do think about it consciously, and it's not just bodybuilding. I've always tried to seek out people that are smarter and better at something than I am, and to learn from those people. And then it's sometimes it evolves. You get to a point where you need to move on to other people, but it's. I've always tried to be open minded. I've always tried to consider other ideas, and I've always sought out mentorship and paid for it where I've had to. I mean, it's been incredibly important in business. It's been I mean, even as a musician, if you want to be the best, right? You want to go take lessons from the best instructors, right? You want to go to the best school. You want to learn from the best people. Those are the people that are going to make you better. The people that are going. It's comfortable and easy to stay around people that are less intelligent than you, that are less successful than you. It is challenging and intimidating to go and hang out with people that are better than you.
Yeah, actually, to circle back to the music metaphor. So when I started undergrad, I was at a really small school in Ohio, Youngstown State, and it's a nice whatever, it's a fine place. I'm not denigrating Youngstown, but I was like the second best guitarist in 200 miles. Right? Like that's, because of how small it was. And then I moved to Chicago and I went to DePaul and I was the worst guitarist in a room of, 20 people. Like it was a completely different environment. And that was, I mean, ultimately, again, I didn't end up becoming a jazz guitarist, but like that's what you need. I got way better in Chicago than I did at Youngstown because I felt like an asshole every day, right? Like you're just surrounded by people who are better than you, and you want to keep up.
Yeah, and that's true. And the way you progress and you upgrade your game, so to speak, is to compete and be around people that are better than you. That's how you get better.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
get
yeah,
better
yeah. You're
by
not going to get better beating the same people you've always beaten.
right. I mean, it's I've progressed. I've played with professional musicians, and it's eye opening when you play. Same thing with sports. I was a basketball player as well, and I remember being on the court with a guy that eventually ended up being a star in the NBA, and I'm like, holy shit! I thought I was good at basketball. Yeah, yeah, it was a long time ago, but I played in a game against Allen Iverson a long time ago, and I'm just like, oh my God, this guy, I can't, I thought I was decent at basketball. I couldn't stay in front of this dude. I'm like, so there are levels to things, and that's how you progress and get better at stuff, and not to be afraid of those people that are. I think a lot of people, you see it with a lot of people that are close minded and don't mean to be mean, but stupid. They don't want they're very intimidated by people that are better and smarter than them, and they lash out. It seems like rather than trying to be open and learn. That is something that I don't know. That my parents really encouraged in me when I was younger, is to always try to be better and learn from people that are better. Try to have some humility. It takes a little bit of humility too. Um, and then compete. Don't be afraid to compete with those people.
Yeah, I think it takes humility, but and I also think that then the other upside is you get to experience and see more excellence, right? Like you get to fucking play with Allen Iverson, right? You know what I mean? Like who cares? You were never going to get be better than him, but you got to be on that court. That's amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that I yeah, I've gotten to play with real musicians, and I was never going to be as good at them, but I remember what it sounded like to watch them pluck the strings or to play on sax. You know, and like you don't get those kinds of experiences if you're too busy protecting your own ego.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing with bodybuilding. Like I just kept trying to up the level. Let's go to the next level and see what happens. Let's go to the next level and see what happens. It's just another series of things that I've done in my life, right? In business too. There's you think you're hot shit, and then you talk to somebody that's way smarter and better at it than you are, and you're like, wow, I don't know anything, and it's just always being open to those experiences.
Yeah, and to circle back to bodybuilding, so you got your pro card last year, right? How does it? I know. I've observed a lot of your content. It seems like you mentioned earlier in this conversation that being on stage is kind of anticlimactic. It sort of seems like you achieved this goal and you're sort of less excited now or less certain of what to do. What does it feel like from your perspective?
Um, it was I honestly it's not like I sought to get the pro card when I started out. It was just the same thing. I just kept upping the level of competition that I was in, and then I got first and won the overall this year, and I'm just like, what do I do now? Sorry, it's my dog back here. I don't know if you heard that or not. My dog burping.
Yeah, we are right. You have like a big. That sounded like a truck. You have a big dog, right?
English Mastiff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like, yeah, it was sort of anticlimactic afterwards. Like, obviously there was the rush of winning it and being on the stage. Like, it didn't feel real. Like I couldn't believe. I honestly like when they called out third and second place. It was just like, nah, I didn't get it. And then they called me out in first place. I was like, holy fuck, what? Yeah, so that was a little surreal. But then it's just like afterwards, it's like I'm 50 years old. I'm not gonna be Mr. Olympia. So it's like, where do I go from here?
Yeah. Does it? I mean, are you still enjoying the lifestyle and training and all the things you've always
I've been kind of,
participated in?
to be honest with you, it was kind of like a big exhale after the show. I retired last year. I've been just kind of enjoying life. I've been traveling. I mean, I still go to the gym every day. I've been half-ass following a diet. But I haven't been as focused on the bodybuilding the last 6 months. I've really been more focused on my training business and helping my clients. But I do want to do a pro show. I don't feel like I'm really a pro until I compete as a pro. To me, I look at the pro card win as sort of it's like getting drafted into the NFL. You're not a real player until you actually play.
Hmm. I mean, it's still an amazing accomplishment, but I
Yeah,
hear what you're saying too.
yeah. But this is just how my mind works. This is the all right. So I did that. Now what's next? That's in the rearview mirror. That's over. That's done with. That accomplishment is done. I need another goal to grind at. So I just want to step on. This has always been my approach, and this kind of goes back to music. Um, I I marched. I don't know if you know anything about drum and bugle corps, but I marched drum and bugle corps when I was in college. And I marched in one of the best ones in the world at the time. But I remember the director of my drum and bugle corps. He would always say, "Don't worry about the placings; they don't matter. It's what matters is that you get better each day, and that you put 100% into that work that you've done that day. And if you do that every day, the results will follow." So that's sort of my approach with bodybuilding. Like I never really cared about how I placed. I just want to make sure that I put 100% of my effort into it and that I get on stage knowing that there's nothing else I could have done. I did the best that I possibly could in every aspect of it, with the training, with the diet, and not just that. And I think this is a part that a lot of bodybuilders miss. It is a performance too, and a lot of guys don't place well because they don't work on the performance aspect of it either. They don't work on the posing. They don't work on the presentation, how they look on stage. I mean, I think that's another thing that goes back to being a performing arts major, that you understand that the performance is very important.
Yeah,
How
I mean, it's a pageant, right? Like that
right?
that is what bodybuilding
It
is.
is ultimately, yes. And I've seen a lot of guys cost themselves placings just and they get very disappointed because they can't present themselves on stage, or they don't have the confidence for being on stage. And I would say that was one thing where music really helped me a lot, because after after you've performed so many times, it just you still get butterflies, a little bit of an adrenaline rush, but it almost becomes like another day at work.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, you know how to overcome those feelings because you've done it before. And I really like the point you said, that the quote from the Bugle Corps instructor. I mean, I think to me that strikes me as a thing, as being focused on inputs rather than outputs. We can only, right? We can't. The world is random and chaotic. You can't control who shows up at a bodybuilding show. Can't control if you get food poisoning or something goes wrong the couple days prior. But you
Yep.
can make sure you do all the things that are within your power.
Yeah, there's oh god, what was his name? The 90-10 principle.
Pareto principle. Now, well, I don't know if that's one. That's like the principle, but there's
Stephen
like a
Covey.
guy.
Stephen Covey. Yep.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey. I don't know if you've ever read any of his stuff, but Stephen Covey is kind of a mindset and success guy. He passed away a long time ago, but he had the 90-10 principle, and he talks about focusing, how to distribute your thoughts, and that 90% of what happens in your life is within your control, and you focus on those things. That 90%, the 10% is out of your control, and you don't spend any effort focusing on those. And most people do the exact opposite.
Exact opposite. Yeah.
They do the exact opposite. And in back to the drum corps example, how the judges place you, or bodybuilding, how the judges place you is completely out of your control. That's one thing I've noticed, that people get very upset in bodybuilding shows about the judging. They're like, "Well, the judges suck. The judges are terrible. It was politics and all that stuff." And I'm like, it doesn't even matter, man. You don't have any control over that. Spend zero effort worrying about that. Worry about the things that you can control. Focus all your energy on those things, and I think ultimately, if you do those things, one, you'll be just a happier person, and you'll also perform better.
Yeah, I think the point about happiness is key, because at the end of the day, you're only doing this. This doesn't matter, right? We're doing it for ourselves. We're doing it to better ourselves. Maybe you're doing it. Maybe you're doing it to because you got divorced and you want to be able to pick up women. But whatever, like it's still, we're not saving the world. And so the reason to do this is ultimately gratification, satisfaction, happiness. And if it's driving you nuts because someone you've never met before didn't give you the plastic trophy you thought you wanted, I don't know, man. Like I don't think this isn't helping you.
Yeah, and it's just a disease that I see that a lot of people suffer of anyway. They just don't have any control over their thoughts or their emotions, and they do spend the majority of their time lamenting things that they have no control over, and hyper focusing on those things, and being angry at situations and other people that have no bearing on anything that they're doing, that really, really have effect on how they live their life. And and once again, it's another thing, mindfulness, that you have to practice.
And I do think it's another thing that's exacerbated by the times we live in. We have all this media and all this energy is invested in sapping our attention, and it gets people sucked into the moment instead of being actually
Yep.
present.
Yep. No, you're 100% right. And that's something that I really tried. Another thing too, I remember, and I learned this from so many lessons from music, is quieting that voice in your head, having control over the internal dialogue, how much that can affect how outcomes in your life. Quieting that voice in your head, having it tell you the right things. A lot of times, that voice is going to tell you all the wrong things.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Self
absolutely.
doubt, negativity, all these other things. But learning how to control that, and I remember that was a director I had in music. He was just constantly, he was like worrying about messing up or playing the wrong note. You're going to play the wrong note. Worrying, thinking about, is that my grandma in the audience? You know, that's or is that hot girl looking at me, right? There's or what are they thinking? There's all all those things that enter your mind that can really just mess you up. And it's just learning how to control that internal dialogue, having control at all times.
Yeah, when I was in particular, there was a part of maybe it was my sophomore year, I was really focused on improving my picking technique. And so I started staring at my hand whenever I would play. And my teacher was like, stop doing that, man. Like, there's a crowd. Like, like we are in a room, communicate with this. But I was obsessed with looking at it. And I remember we had some performance, we had like a visiting jazz performer. And I managed to just like find a blank spot in the auditorium and just look at that. And I played better than I'd played in like 6 months because instead of trying to micromanage my thoughts and control, like minutia of my hand as it was moving, I just played
Yeah,
because I knew how to play. You know.
it's I'm off topic here, but really great musicians. It's always wild to see how effortless they make things look.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's
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 true too
incredible.
in sports and
For
stuff. You'll
everybody, yeah,
see.
yeah, for anyone who's like truly excellent at something, right? Like even like an amazing CEO in a boardroom, an athlete catching a football, someone painting a portrait, playing a guitar, like masters make it look like it's easy.
Well, you don't see the thousands of hours of work that went in to make it look easy.
Maybe just to circle back a little bit to bodybuilding. So you've got. It sounds like It sounds like you will do a pro show debut.
Yeah, as long as my health is okay. That's always, bodybuilding is not exactly the healthiest sport, and you're pushing your body to extremes. So that's always a priority to make sure that I'm healthy and can do the show. But yeah, I'm planning on doing the Tampa Pro this year. Is at least kind of the loose goal for it. That's in first week in August.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so you still got. Will you go through like a half of an off season in preparation for that, or like at the
I
time
didn't,
it's a little weird, right?
not really. Yeah, there wouldn't. There's not time for an off season because prep would start in April. So I'm just I haven't let myself get fat. I'm honestly,
Yeah.
I weigh about the same as I did when I got on stage. Uh, yeah, I think that's the big mistake that a lot of people make for bodybuilding in the off season is they just let themselves get too fat. And the fatter you get, the really, I mean, it's once again, it's a math game. If you put on 30 pounds, that's what is 105,000 calories you got to burn off,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's gonna take time.
That's
Yeah,
a lot of cardio.
yeah,
That's a bigger calorie deficit. So
yeah,
if you only have to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds, it's a lot less work. It makes it a lot easier to get on stage, and you're going to look better too if you have less fat to lose.
yeah. Right. Right. Trying to lose so much in a shorter period of time, it's gonna add so much stress. You're probably gonna lose muscle. You're gonna feel terrible, and your look is gonna suffer.
Oh yeah, 100%. You're going to accumulate more fatigue because you have to work harder. You're going to definitely lose muscle, even with PEDs. There's only so deep of a calorie deficit, and only so much cardio you can do without burning up muscle. So I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to get super fat, and that's always been a sort of a thing that's perplexed me is like the whole bulking thing, like where guys just want to get put on 40, 50 pounds and gain 7 pounds of muscle. I'm like that to me that makes no sense at all. That's not a good ratio.
No, I've never understood when people say things like, "I went on this cycle and I gained 30 pounds." What does that mean, man? Like you can gain 30 pounds doing anything. That's a totally irrelevant metric. Doesn't like it's not about shoveling on water weight or sodium or fat. What did you actually accomplish? We're trying to build muscle.
Yeah, and I think people underappreciate how much a pound of muscle actually is. Like I always tell my clients, I'm like, go to I just recently, this past week, I had a client who was disappointed. He said he'd only gained 6 pounds of muscle in the last 16 weeks, and I told him, I said, man, go to the grocery store, grab 60 pounds of steak, and throw it in your your grocery cart, and yeah, and tell me if you're disappointed that you gained that.
Yeah. No, but again, I think it circles back to this notion of patience, right? Instant gratification. People were like, "Oh, I grew 6 pounds. Why didn't I grow 60?" It's like, well, it doesn't work like that. It takes time.
I mean, if you grow a pound a month for the next 5 years, you're going to be the biggest dude on the planet, right? You're going to be a pro bodybuilder. That's the, and you think about it, a pound a month, that's a quarter pound a week. You can't even see that in the mirror.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah, which is the same way that people get fat too.
yeah,
Right. I mean, it's the same equation. You're
yeah.
just
I mean,
not you're not noticing.
it's like me. Like I put on 60, 70 pounds over a 10-year period of time. That's 6 pounds a year, man. It's a half a
Yeah.
pound a month.
Yeah. You don't notice it.
No, you don't notice a half a pound a month, but it accumulates over a period of time, and then next thing you know, you're fat and getting divorced.
Yeah. It's fair. So in terms of coaching, because you've got the show coming up. You mentioned sort of diving more into social media. I know you have. I mean, you've got a lot of different sort of services you offer. You have your own coaching. You've got your anabolics course with Kurt Havens. You've got some written products. You've got forum. You've got a school thing, right? Like
Yeah,
in your mind, is there a direction that you're going with all of this? Is there something, or is it more just like fun and experimentation at this point?
I'm just playing around right now. I do think I want to do more education stuff. I want to make some more courses. I think there's a that seems to be the thing. The I was throwing a bunch of stuff up against the wall just to see what people wanted. Honestly, testing the market, whatever you want to call it. But it seems like people there seems to be a desire or a craving for courses where they learn about things. The anabolics course sold way more than what I was expecting. Like it was beyond successful what I thought it was. I mean, we put a lot of work in it. There's 60 hours of videos up there, so I mean,
Yeah, that's substantial. Yeah.
that's it's a lot of work recording all those, editing them, and then I wrote like all the tech stuff that went with it as well too. So I mean, there's hundreds of hours of work that went into that course. But yeah, I am working on some other courses right now. I'm working on one on fat loss. I am working on one. I probably will put it out later in the year on muscle gaining. I'd like to do some stuff. I'd also like to get a little more into sort of longevity. I also thought about putting together some stuff on just, we spent a lot of time talking about mindset and success. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. I feel like that's an area where there are also a lot of charlatans.
Oh, I mean, like almost everyone, right?
Yeah,
Which is kind of which is strange too, because it's this weird thing where if you're if you're a charlatan and you convince everyone that you're successful, and then you become successful as a result, does
yeah,
that validate, right? Are you no longer a liar? You know, the best example I think of, I do some real estate investing. Do you know Rich Dad Poor Dad?
yeah,
Right, the really right. So like that guy Kiyosaki, I think is his name.
yeah.
He never
Robert.
made any money in real estate. He never made any money, but he's made like he's a multi millionaire as an educator and a speaker. So
Yeah,
is he a fraud? I like I don't know. I don't even know how to evaluate that.
and that's
Right.
another reason why, like with the bodybuilding content, one of my it's one of my factors for wanting to compete. I wanted to prove that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. You know so it's not just empty words. Um, and the success and mindset thing, like there's that's another area where I think there's a lot of bad information and a lot of bullshit that's out there. Um, and I've had some really been lucky to have some really good mentors in my life that have really helped with that. And I'm not saying I know everything, um, but that's another area I'd sort of like to talk and help people out with a little bit. Just being better at controlling the voice in their head, setting goals. These little things that I assume that most people know, but they don't.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Right there. I I remember listening to Alex Hormozy was talking about how being on time, people don't think of that as a skill, but it's actually something that you can break down into its constituent parts, right? Like what do you think about before you leave? You think about worst case scenario, you think about best case scenario, are you preparing for traffic? Like these are things that I think lots of people just do automatically, but if you are bad at it, if you don't have that skill, you actually have to break it down and figure out what the parts are that you don't understand, learn those and then implement them.
Yeah, and I'm a crazy nut about being on time for things. I mean, if you're a performer,
Yeah.
you are not late for rehearsal. You are not late for being on stage, right?
Well, yeah, you don't get second chances. If
No,
you're late for the gig, like that is the gig is ruined. You
you're
cannot
done.
do that. You cannot do that. Yeah.
No, no, and that was ingrained into me
Yeah.
early.
Yeah.
Yeah, you show up on time, so yeah, I mean, I like Alex a lot because he's actually a guy who has walked the walk. Um,
Right, and he's jacked. Right.
yeah,
It
he's
helps. It
jacked.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy Alex. He's sort of controversial, but I enjoy Alex's content a lot. He actually, I think, says practical things. He's basically like cut the bullshit and just do something, essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think that's why he doesn't feel like a guru to me.
yeah,
Because he actually, right, he has experience and he actually talks about implementable things.
yeah, and it's funny because it seems like he just gives everything away for free. Like he just
Mm-hmm.
tells
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah.
And that is another lesson that I have, and this was a hard one. I did IT consulting for years, and this is one I learned a while ago. Is that if you give a lot of times just give the information away for free, if people want your time, then charge them for that. Um, and pretty much, everything that's really most of the stuff that's in the e-course is on my YouTube channel. There's stuff out there people can watch. It's just structured and put in a way, and then you can also ask questions from me directly there. But it's just not being afraid to share your knowledge with people. And ultimately, I found that if you do that, if you just do the right thing and put your knowledge out there, that the financial success comes along with it.
And actually, that was I was going to ask in closing, sort of a selfish question. I think we're already talking about it. So I'm doing online coaching. I'm relatively new to the online space. I've done coaching for a while. It sounds like what's your kind of general advice for someone in a position like that? It sounds like part of it's about giving out value and information.
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to give away information for free. Demonstrate that you know what you're doing through actions and your own actions, and don't try to be something you're not. Be like it's weird. Like I'll have people that'll meet me in person. They're like, "Wow, you're exactly like you were online," and I'm like, "Is there any other way to be?" I don't know. I think a lot of people are try to be something else. You'll attract the right people if you're just yourself, um, and just work hard for people. Be willing to work hard for people. I mean, I was up till 2 a.m. doing check-ins last night. You think that's what I want to do on a Saturday night?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's funny. I did a new client check-in last night at about 11:30. Yeah.
Yeah, part of it's how I work, my schedule. I like working late, but it's just work hard, be honest, um, walk the walk, and if also don't be afraid to say I don't know. I think that's a big thing. Like you only get one chance to for integrity. Like if you say something that you're not sure about, and you mess it up and you're wrong, it comes back to haunt you all the time. So just say, look, I don't know. I'm going to look into that for you.
Yeah, I do think it's a superpower to be able to admit that you're wrong and to correct yourself. People get and fail. Maybe back to the topic earlier about ideology and belief. People get too attached to it, but if you can just say you're wrong, that's the best way to hold on to your integrity.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You only get one shot with the integrity thing, so it's important to protect that. That's probably the most important asset that most of us have is your integrity. And once you lose that, you'll see it in the internet charlatans like Liver King once that guy got exposed. I mean, do you even hear about him anymore?
No, I think I saw some video where he was like chain smoking in Poland or something like that. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's completely lost his mind. I mean, I knew immediately the guy was a charlatan, but a lot of people didn't. But
Right.
the
We
people,
were not his demographic, to be fair. I
yeah,
mean,
the people like that never last. To be honest with you, but just be yourself, work hard, do good work. It's the same principles that apply to anything else, man. Really.
yeah, yeah, it's just applied effort over time consistently.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I'll plug your stuff. Is there anything you want to? You mentioned your upcoming e-courses or anything else you want to mention?
Nah, no, nothing really. Just people know where to find me if they want to find me.
For sure. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, happy to help.